For me, success is just waking up every day and liking what I'm doing, liking the people I'm doing it with, not having to worry for money, and obviously health is a part of that and family, but it's not like an X dollar amount that I got rid of a long time ago. It's really just going to bed the night before and, like looking forward to the next day. That for me is success just right now in what I'm doing.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I am your host, as always, on this little journey I like to call a podcast over here, Yona Weiss. Great to have you joining us today, you listeners, you out there. Yeah, I'm talking to you. You driving the car, whatever you're doing on your jog. And today we got an awesome guest. So I'm really excited to introduce Jonathan Farber from who knows where. I don't know. He's somewhere in Colombia right now, but he's an awesome guy doing awesome stuff. And I'm not just saying that. We'll get into some of those awesome things very shortly. But before we do, John, what is going on? How are you doing today?
I'm excited to be here, man. This is long overdue. And I've been following your journey for a while, been very envious of what you've been doing on social media, man. And it's cool to see how you've taken your brand to another level, but I'm doing good. I'm in Colombia right now, been traveling for almost 2 years now. And yeah, Colombia, the country, not the state, but I'm here with some entrepreneurs. We got a little creator house and we're having some fun. So happy to be here.
Well, good for you. I mean, listen, guys, if you don't know who Jonathan is, he's a real estate investor. Okay. But when I say he's a real estate investor, he's doing it on a different level than most people would even imagine is possible. And how he's done that, I'm really interested to kind of dig into that a little bit more today. But he owns a bunch of short-term rentals, talked a lot about that, and basically was doing that while working full-time for a corporate technology sales company. And he was very successful at that, but wasn't enjoying it and was able to quit the rat race, as they call it, and go full-time into real estate, which really means full-time living life, however he decides to do it in Colombia, remotely, whatever he's doing, literally financial freedom as everyone looks forward to. So at the age of 27, so let's just jump right into that. I mean, you started investing with something called house hacking, right? And we've talked about that on the show before. Why don't you tell us about how house hacking works? You're still doing it today, right? To a certain extent.
House hacking is what I still think is one of the best ways for beginners to get started, or people that are just looking to get closer to financial freedom in a short period of time. And I define financial freedom as just your cost of living being covered by passive investments. And there's a scale of active versus passive, but if you can make income on the side from investments and your cost of living is lower, you can bridge that gap a lot sooner. So house hacking is great because house hacking, short version of it is you buy a property that because you live in it, the banks and basically Fannie and Freddie Mac, the government, they back these loans, they support these loans that enable people to put very little money down. And when you put very little money down, it's easier for people to get started, one, but then two, what makes it the full house hacking strategy is you can rent out the other rooms or units. And by doing that, you can either live for free, or in a lot of cases now, what we're seeing with people that do 30-night minimum Airbnbs in the other parts of the property, they're actually being paid to live. So for most people, there's tons of stats on it out there. I'm kind of a finance and financial freedom nerd, obviously, but for most people, their two biggest expenses in life are their house and their car. So if you can figure out ways to offset those and actually flip them on your balance sheet from maybe an expense to a profit driver, you have just made a 60 or 70% leap in a direction that most people never think about doing their entire life. So that's why house hacking is effective and powerful. And you can get those low money down loans. You can buy a property with 5% down, do the house hack strategy once a year for a couple of years until you max out your lendability or debt to income, which a bank can tell you. But that's why it's such a powerful strategy, because you can remove a huge expense. You can learn about real estate, you can get tax write-offs, and you're in the game. And for a lot of people, I kind of call it training wheels for real estate, because you can start and you don't need a ton of experience, but you're in the game, and not a lot can go wrong on a house hack if you do a little bit of research. So that's why I like it. That's what I recommend for a lot of people who are looking to get started. And yeah, that's how I got started in real estate. I house hacked three times. My first three properties when I was 22, 23, and 24. And then the last one was a quadplex that, was kind of the home run of house hacking. And that's how I got into the game. And I've kept all those properties as rentals, converted some of them into furnished rentals and Airbnbs, and some of them have stayed traditional rentals. But it was a great start into real estate that I think a lot of beginners can model or blueprint.
Yeah, absolutely. And it obviously does depend on the market you're in, right? Certain places are not necessarily conducive to having those type of arrangements. But even if you're doing it, especially if you're young and you're single, like you were, renting out rooms, buy a 4 or 5 bedroom house and renting out those rooms to cover the mortgage and your living expenses just seems like such like you said, an accelerator to that financial freedom.
Yeah. And what most people do is the exact opposite. They get out of college, maybe take a nice starting job, and then they start racking up all these expenses that don't make any sense. But it's because it's what we're told to do. It's what society has kind of ingrained in us, and it's keeping up with the Joneses. And it's what ultimately I found looking back at my job. It's what the employers and sales managers really want you to do. Mm-hmm. They want you to get into a hole so that you come to work motivated every day, and you need to work to make your car payment, house payment, credit card payment. But, they're not going to tell you to lean out your expenses. Otherwise you might lose motivation. So most people, they get in all this debt. They have these very high costs of living to kind of quote unquote experience life, 22 to 25. And ultimately, I think that's completely flipped. I think if you sacrifice just for a few years out of college, and I'm not talking about like living in a hut, I'm talking about small life sacrifices that for most people in the world, that would not even be a sacrifice. But because we live in this US kind of materialistic bubble, it feels like a huge sacrifice, but it's not. But if you do it that way, then you flip the whole retirement sacrifice thing, that if you just do it a little on the front end, then you could have 30, 40, 50, 60 years of quote unquote financial freedom, where most people, they can't make that sacrifice, work 50, 60 years, and then they have to retire in a place that isn't nearly as good. So that's why it's really powerful.
Yeah. I'd love to talk about some of those things you're talking about. Obviously, we all can live more frugally and be more conscious of how we're spending our money and things like that. But before I do, I forgot to mention, and we'll just give a little plug right here. This is a little segue, is you're also the host of an awesome podcast called Millennial Millionaires Real Estate. It's an incredible podcast. If you guys are listening to this, check it out. Go subscribe to that and hear awesome stories and awesome guests who are millennials a lot of the time. But John just talking about his story as well, and a lot of great insights.
Yeah, as we were talking about before, it's a great way to meet people. And that was my whole MO at the beginning of podcasting. I read a book, which maybe I'll save for the end, for the final four, but a book that really encouraged me to start podcasting and other people to start building a brand, raising money, meeting people. And I just went full force into it. I started doing a daily podcast, didn't care that no one was listening, but I was getting a lot out of it because I was meeting all these people that I looked up to, and I was building relationships with them. Some of them became partners, mentors, and then other people just good friends that now I have today. So yeah, I mean, if people want to check out the podcast, great. No pressure. It's a real estate podcast. It's cool. But, I think it's more the learning that I got. If I was restarting and wanted to blow up my network and meet a lot of people, and I tell people a lot of times now that are looking to do like Airbnb management or co-hosting for other people, the best way to meet landlords, just like me and you do, to meet our potential clients is by interviewing them and showing them that we're legit, professional, and having a dialogue. And I think that's a great way for people to, make relationships in 2021, because people are busy, and, picking someone's brain or virtual coffee, it's a little less enticing than asking someone to come on your podcast. So that's how I think about podcasting now. Yes, I love to put it out there and we get it out. That's all good. But, it's a real estate podcast, but it's cool and it's fun. It's great to meet people. It is a lot. I mean, that's really the main thing. I mean, as everyone knows, who's ever listened to any of these podcasts, you'll know that all of the guests, without maybe one exception in the 200 episodes or so that we've released, are people that I know, people I have relationships with, or people that I want to get to know a little better. And so it makes the conversation a little more better, it makes it a little more natural, and it creates or develops that relationship already. So I appreciate you coming on the show, John, and to our listeners to realize this is really more, I try to keep it as natural as possible. This isn't an artificial conversation over here. We're just kind of recording our conversation, put it up on the Buzzsprout or whatever, and everyone else gets
to listen to it.
Love it. Yeah, man. It's a great way to just also, I use it sometimes selfishly to just catch up with friends that too much time has passed. And I'm like, you know what? People are interested in this. Let's just record it and we can release it like a podcast. And it's me and a friend that's also doing flips or wholesales. And we're just catching up. Oh, what's working for you? What's not?
Right.
You know, what's exciting right now? Other people want to hear that too. And, you know, I think, again, it doesn't have to be like a stressful or high pressure thing. You know, it can be fun. And I think a lot of people could get value in starting one or, you know, kind of getting into the podcast world.
Yeah. So something you've talked about a lot, and I've learned from you just from your social media and from your podcast, is you talk a lot about virtual assistants or VAs, as people like to call them, and building that. It's something that I've struggled with, I guess trying, but not trying hard enough to actually implement and bring on board. I mean, did you have, maybe it's just me, but did you have like challenges like hiring people, finding the right people? Like, how do you do that? Like that, I think for me, that's the biggest deterrent for me to actually follow through with that.
You know, there's not a lot of great content on virtual assistants out there that I've found, and I've researched a lot of it and read a lot of virtual assistant books. I don't think books are the best way to learn about virtual assistants personally. I think it would be better video based, but it's a huge challenge, especially for, I think, a lot of high achievers that are in a nice way control freaks because they've worked really hard to build something. They've worked really hard to build something. They've put a lot of time into it. They've built a brand, an image. And if you have a virtual assistant doing posts for you or copywriting, and there's all these typos and these mistakes, it can be a huge stop button at the beginning and a deterrent for people that don't want to use leverage. So for me, I have a couple of core philosophies of virtual assistants. And just for context, right now we have about 10 full-time virtual assistants that are doing cold calling, texting. They post all of our content. They do all of our editing. They do all of our Airbnb guest management. They do community management for their paid communities. And, you know, basically, it really was gradual. You know, it was one of those things that I look at. It's like, start with one task, start with the most simple task that you don't like doing that can be done from a computer or a phone. And that's really the criteria. Anything that can be done on a computer or a phone can be handled by someone. Now, Yona, what you might get value in is I've been experimenting more with different talent pools that aren't like your traditional, what you see on TikTok and YouTube is, you know, $3 an hour virtual VAs in the Philippines, which there you have a high learning curve if you don't have training process. But what I've been actually doing now, we've been hiring some stay-at-home military moms. We find them in Facebook groups. They're just work from home moms or, you know, like stay-at-home house moms. You know, I hope that's politically correct to say. That's what they say. And, you know, they're just looking for more virtual work. If it's messaging people on Instagram, if it's editing things, if it's posting content, you know, that you just give them, and they're American, they're not looking to make a ton of money because, you know, they know that this is kind of low wage labor and they're reliable. So we've been experimenting with some of them to do Airbnb guest management during the day. We still have an overnight VA who's in the Philippines that we trained, and, you know, she has all our training and stuff, but we've been experimenting with that because we did find that there were some jobs that there were just social norms and kind of communication styles that VAs out of the country weren't able to necessarily pick up. And no matter how much training you gave them. But anyway, I guess back to like, you know, how someone could take action with this or how maybe you can is, you know, it's just, we found it to be find one task and get very clear on what our process was for doing it. And what we also like with that is by defining the process, you find improvements in your own process. And then you can also hand it off to someone and then they can use it. And then also what we do is we sell our processes. It turns into paid education and courses. So we got that from Michael Hyatt, that every single thing he does, he's an awesome productivity writer. Every single process he does, he turns into training that he sells as a course or a book, but it's also the same training that he uses for his employees, himself, just to kind of checklist manifesto his own life. You know, if any of you guys haven't read that book, it's kind of, I like to think about it like it's the reason, you know, pilots and surgeons, they still go through a checklist. It's not because they haven't done it a lot of times. It's just, it's easy. You can shut your mind off and you just don't have to think. So I like to just think of everything we do in a process. I saw a good Henry Ford documentary and it was like a car isn't complicated. It's just like 12,000 steps done in the right order. And I was like, I like that. Like everyone tries to make things complicated, but you can just break out the steps. And once you do that, you can make a post on Upwork or Fiverr or Freelancer. We really like Online Jobs PH. It's a high quality talent pool. There's a little bit of a cost. It's $49 a month, but we find great talent on there. And also, if we find someone great, they typically know other great people. That can be referrals to do other things. And then the way that we track everything is we have a project management tool. We use Notion. It's like a glorified to-do list, project management list. And then we communicate on Slack. And for me, we're just always trying to improve the system. One thing I would say for anyone starting out VAs, they need a lot of training at the beginning. We have a policy, ask any question you want in the first 30 days. There's no stupid questions. We give you all the training, but never hesitate to reach out. After 30 days, the first thought should be to look it up in the process guide or the training. And if it's not covered in there, ask us and we'll add it. And if you're continuing to ask things that are covered in the training, then we've now adopted, I would say, what used to be a weakness for us, we fire quickly. We used to keep on bad people. And that's where I think a lot of people get in trouble with hiring and employees and VAs. It was a soft spot for me. I didn't like firing people, but ultimately all the great companies have to do that. And you need to keep the engine moving with qualified, capable people. So my advice, start small, build a process, outline your steps, and then you can always scale and find more people. But I'd say in 2021, scaling a business where you want to, keep your time and quality of life, leverage is a must. Without it, you might be doing things that you're not good at or you don't like doing, and it could kind of bottleneck your business.
Absolutely. And 2022 going forward.
It's true. We got a new year coming.
Yeah, it's crazy. When this episode will be released also, by the way. But no, it's all about taking action. I love the fact that you kind of broke it down with the Henry Ford example of just having actionable steps and in the right order and creating those processes. I think I'm the kind of over glorified, kind of self-aggrandized person that you mentioned at the beginning that is a little bit, hesitant to let someone else kind of take over my image or my brand for for good reasons, obviously. But those are things that I really need to let go in order to grow. Especially I'm trying to, be more active involved in investing and looking into buying my first Airbnb property, something I'm actively looking in right now. So that's something I'm like, I need to do this.
Yona, one thing that really helped me was realizing that there are people that love to do the things that I hate doing. Mm-hmm. I was really naive to the fact that if I don't like doing it, it means everyone doesn't like doing it. Completely flawed thinking, where there are people that they love scraping data. They love cold texting. They actually like cold calling. I don't like doing any of those things. But if I were to ask them to do a presentation in front of 200 people, words wouldn't come out of their mouth. And if I was to ask them to design processes and come up with goals for the company and things like that, they wouldn't do that. So that actually helped us in a couple of ways, just have that mindset shift. But then it helped us grow because these people were better and they liked doing the things that we weren't doing. They weren't getting done because we didn't like doing them and we weren't good at doing them. So it just prevented us, completely. And then there's all the sayings, done is better than perfect and, all that, whatever you need to do it. But ultimately for me, what I think about is anything that I need my face, my voice, building relationships, and in some cases doing sales. Those are things that I don't know if I can outsource. All the other stuff operationally, I think there are ways with outsourcing. Also, you may have had him on the show, but Bailey Kramer, he's helped us a lot with Zapier. It's an amazing automation tool that moves data around a lot of our workflows for us that we were using VAs to do. And now we've kind of repurposed those VAs for other things because we use now some more automation to kind of do stuff. But it's tough, man. Like any perfectionist and high level business person, is going to have trouble with it. But, there comes a time.
Absolutely. Now you talked about kind of in passing some of your paid communities. What is that? What's going on there with a paid community?
So, okay. I think this is like a natural progression for people that go down this, investing in social media world, that people are curious how you're doing what you're doing. And I guess I never really liked the idea of like being a coach or coaching for a couple of reasons. One, I was kind of like, a little negative on it from seeing some really like schemy, like scummy type of like gurus and coaches out there that I didn't think were even doing the work and just charging really high ticket and not getting great results. So I was a little like against it, but enough people were asking me. So, but my whole thing on is scale. I can't scale one-on-one coaching. I don't like the concept of trading time for money. I'm a true millennial in the sense that I have fear of commitment. I do calls only one day a week. I do not want calls on my calendar. If it gives me anxiety, hey, maybe I'm weak for it, but it just, luckily we can design our own lives. I don't like it. So for me, I wanted to see what were the most scalable ways to either put out content or educate people that were one, low cost, two, effective, and then three, let people on my team step in and maybe help with some of the training. So we just launched this one, and my whole thing, is multiple streams of income. Right now I have 22 streams of income. My goal is to get that every quarter, 3 or 4 more. If it's another product, another property, another course, whatever. But ultimately for me, this was just one that I thought was pretty kind of cool to get started. It was $15 a month for beginner investors. It's access to all the tools I use. And I'm not promoting it here. It's just for people that actually want to start a community. I think it's a cool way. If you have a brand, it's a way that you can build. I like it because it's recurring income every month. Think about it. We have about 360 people that are paying me $15 a month just on auto bill. And, I do trainings in there and we do like a lot of accountability groups and stuff like that. But my point is I like it as a model for other content creators as a way to add an income stream and also help people that isn't crazy expensive. It's not a $10,000, $20,000 course. It's for beginners. And I think it's priced that way. So we have a free community that is really good for networking. But, this was one that I think I didn't see a lot of people doing. I saw a lot of people with high ticket, and I thought this would be kind of a cool way to start another community and help beginners. So that's what that is. Point to take from that is if you're listening and you're a brand or a content creator or an investor, I think it's a really cool way to maybe undercut some of the high ticket people and make, I would say, fairly passive reoccurring income. It's not bad. So that's what that community is. But, there's a couple others and, we just try to help people and add value.
Right. Awesome. And I love that you're doing it in so many different ways. I mean, it's incredible because it just shows you like you're talking about scaling the whole time, right? It's all about finding the processes, scaling, right? Building something, putting in another process, scaling that, and just integrating all of it together. So
yeah. I got one more weird one on that too. You'll get a kick out of this and the audience too. Like I was struggling with content creation and organizing it. People on the outside might think like, no, you're not struggling with content creation. You're putting it, but I didn't like that it wasn't leveraged. I felt like it was unorganized and it was too dependent on me. So I actually hired this girl who is actually my ex-girlfriend, and she's great at this stuff. And she's been cranking it. She does all our Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And I guess that's where like I always come back to with anyone that's stuck or curious, like it's either the wrong person, for the role, or they don't have enough direction in the role. But she had enough direction. She likes doing it. And now she's cranking it, and it's not weird at all that she's my ex, but it's just cool, and it's just, she's been doing a great job with it. But I guess back to the point of like, that's driving the brand and it's leveraged, because she will take a YouTube video and cut it up into 20 pieces of content. Before it was one piece of content. It wasn't leveraged. I didn't like it. So you can amplify everything you're doing if you get automation and the right people in place, and it's not easy, but it's worth taking the time to learn about.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. Practically speaking, I don't know about any other people listening to this, but personally, I can leverage some of these tools myself, which is kind of the whole point of the conversation here. But I appreciate it. I think now as time flies, we're going to transition now what we like to call the final 4. And so these are 4 questions I ask all my guests. First question for you: what is the worst job that you ever had?
I remember this so vividly. It was a quote unquote internship where I was doing cold calling for this tech company. They gave me no direction. They just gave me literally a stack of phone numbers and names to call. No direction, nothing to say on the phones. They were just like, yeah, like this is our product line. Like watch some YouTube videos on cold calling and like do it. And I'm like, okay. And I was calling on my cell phone. The whole thing was garbage. And yeah, I ended up kind of quitting like a couple of weeks to go, but it was horrible. And it motivated me to get better at sales. That was my takeaway from it. And also too, that like, I did not want to work for this type of person ever again. But yeah, that was the worst. I remember the first day I got there, I showed up in like a suit and they had me like unpacking boxes. I was like, what are we doing here? The whole thing was hilarious though. And I look back and like laugh at it, but it was pretty rough at the time. All the other jobs I had, I started working at 13, like I liked, and I made money and it was all good. But that was in college. That sucked.
Oh, that's horrible. But you learn the lessons, and that's really the most important part, right?
Yeah, you got to try.
The second question, what's a book you've read, and you probably alluded to this earlier, that has given you a paradigm shift?
I used to be such a book nerd. I would read a book a week. I actually read a lot less now because I find I learn better other ways. But the book I will say is Joe Fairless's Best Ever Apartment Syndication Guide. Not for the reason that people might think, someone might be listening to this and they're like, oh, I'm not an apartment syndicator. Forget that. Joe is the best system builder of anyone that I may have like seen publish stuff in business. He does what we talked about before of breaking everything down into just a series of steps. And then when I had the chance to work kind of with him, I saw that even more of just like everything is a process. There's nothing complicated that can't be figured out. It's just designing the steps. And if it's going to be, okay, what are the 15 steps to picking an Airbnb market? Or what's our 12-step process for training a new, manager, whatever it is. That's what that book really taught me. And it's an inspirational book too, but it's really like a handbook. It's like a textbook, and that hit me at the right time. And that book just really helped me. The other one is my favorite book of all time, but it's just more like kind of overarching. That's 4 Hour Work Week. You could have guessed. Yeah. But Joe's book is amazing. Yeah. They're both great. I recommend both. You
got it right here. It's
there we go. And you got a bookmark in it. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, right there. Definitely. I mean, I've gone through this a couple of times. I think that's an incredible takeaway from that book. One of the other things that I thought you were going to say, which he really is excellent at as well, which kind of he's known for, is about building a brand. And that book talks so much about that and about having a thought leadership platform and building the brand. And I think that's the biggest thing I took away from the book. But the process is, you can see that clearly. It is a textbook, and it reads like that step-by-step guide to everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I forget what I was referring to before. I was like, I'll come back to it later. That book is the reason I started the podcast.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So
that makes sense.
That is brand building. And, it's just a great book. It's so funny. Yeah. I mean, it's cool that you have it right there. It's just a great book, and you could take a lot from it.
Yeah. You can sit right on my desk with a few other books here. Third question. What is a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
Right now, there's like two, but the main one is scaling and hiring employees and structuring incentives for them to want to work hard, but also to not want to leave. I don't see a lot of good content on there. Like I'm fascinated by how Grant Cardone can build a sales staff while his whole brand is don't work for someone, invest. But somehow he has incented people that want to work for him. He's hired and he's trained and he's recruited people that want that. And we've had a couple of challenges candidly lately where people have become really interested in the content that I'm putting out and they want to go and do it on their own. And for me, I'm trying to manage our internal development with people that get excited about seeing what we're doing and they're listening to the advice that I'm giving. But, we're trying to retain talent. So I'm really deep diving how to build incentives and financial structures in companies to keep hungry, ambitious, bright people coming to the list, but that don't also want to leave as soon as they get trained to start their own thing. That's been challenging. And I just don't see a lot of content on there about that. So I've been reaching out to tons of mentors and asking people with companies how they do that. And, we have a structure now that's been working better, but I'm really trying to get better at that.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. I know Gary Vee talks about that quite a bit. He does.
He does. He's got a great concept on it of like, well, how do you expect your employees to want it as bad as you if they're not making as much as you, and that's fair. I had to learn that. It's not taught, but he's the best. I just love his stuff.
You said there was a second thing that you're trying to learn right now. Spanish, was that?
No, third Spanish is third. What the other part is like, I think there's a big gap right now in like business and real estate of like reasonably priced bookkeepers and accountants. And all my real estate friends complain about this. And I'm in that bucket too. I had a very bad experience with them. They're actually a very well-known person, but I just did not have a good experience with them. And bookkeeper, I finally found someone from my community, but like, it wasn't something that I thought there was already a solution for at a decent price point. You can maybe get a great solution. So for me right now, I'm like learning about if it's something that we need to do better internally and maybe hire someone that works for us, or we just find better people outside to do it. So that's just something that's been like more top of mind because I don't know. I had such a bad experience with this last person, but you know, it's what it is.
I hear that. It could be, I mean, just kind of coupling with what you've been talking about earlier. I mean, I have an accountant that I work with, sends me a lot of business for cost's sake, and he has a whole team of virtual accountants that, you know, they understand accounting. He has managers, you know, he trains, they understand accounting, but they live foreignly. He pays them, you know, a fraction of the cost of what it would cost anything else. But again, it might just be, you know, coming up with a solution like that, similar to the previous things we were talking about.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I'm glad you said that.
Fourth and final question. What does success mean to you?
Oh, it's changed a lot. Right now, what it means for me is feeling good, waking up, doing whatever you're doing every day and energized about it and having things to look forward to. I think that's a part of it too. Because for me now, like every day is the same. Like a Saturday and a Tuesday are the exact same day to me. I do the same thing every day. You know, I just schedule my calls the same day. So for me, success is just waking up every day and liking what I'm doing, liking the people I'm doing it with, not having to worry for money, you know, and obviously health is a part of that and family, but you know, it's not like an X dollar amount that I got rid of a long time ago. It's really just going to bed the night before and, you know, like looking forward to the next day. That for me is success just right now in what I'm doing.
Okay. Well said. Awesome. Yeah. And where can our listeners find you or reach out to you? What's the best way?
I would say right now, the best way is probably Instagram, John J. Farb, JONJFARB. We do have a website, same thing. You just Google Jonathan Farber Real Estate, you'll find it. The name doesn't really matter, but yeah, that's it. Also, actually, I would say YouTube. We're really trying to add as much value as we can on YouTube. And that's another income stream, Yona. Like I don't know if you're putting these on YouTube yet, but YouTube AdSense is a whole fascinating beast in itself that you can make a lot of passive income from, way more than you can just podcasting. I'm learning all about it, but I would say Instagram, John J. Farb, or YouTube, just Jonathan Farber Real Estate or Jonathan Farber Airbnb. And anyone that checks out my stuff on YouTube, pretty much every video we do a free giveaway, either an Airbnb analysis tool, a property management tool, a furniture list. All you need to do to get one of those is just drop a comment and subscribe to the channel and just send me a screenshot and we send you a little tool. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We're trying to grow those.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm happily subscribed to that. I've definitely seen a couple of those videos and good stuff. Yes. I can vouch for it. Check it out. YouTube. We'll put the links in the show notes. And one of these days we'll get Weiss Advice up on YouTube as well. One of these days.
You'll be surprised, man.
One of these days, it's going to be done by a virtual assistant. That's for sure. Not me.
Best answer.
John, it's been a tremendous pleasure. I'm so glad we finally got to do this. And great to catch up and glad to see you doing amazing things.
Yona, you the man. Best of luck with everything. Continued success and Happy New Year.
Thank you. And to all our listeners, thanks for joining all the way till the end. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.